can build on that third place on the grid. Fourth on the grid is his RP Motorsport teammate, the Frenchman Alexandre Cougnaud, who makes the jump to the F312 chassis for this year, and a switch of team across from top F3. Cougnaud was in feisty form yesterday in what proved to be a very dramatic race. So this is how they line up then, with Hector Hurst and Ed Jones on the front row of the grid, Santiago Urrutia and Alexandre Cougnaud, row 2, Mario Marasca and Sandy Stuvik, the tyre driver who's won this year, the second race of the season at Paul Ricard, in 6th. Yarin Stern, the quick Israeli driver, in 7th from Valerio Carballo. Lexi Chuklin, the Russian, in 9th, and Andrei Saravia completing the top 10 from Vicky Piria and Mateo Vita. Richard Gonda, the first of the Copper class runners in the Lara F308. He won the class yesterday, the Slovakian, and he lines up in 14th. Luca Orlandi well up in 15th from Tommaso Mencini, with then Lorenzo Paggi and Artur Janos completing row 9. Row 10, we've got Cameron Twynham and Dennis Nagulin from Chaewon Lim and the South African driver Liam Venter. You might be wondering, where on earth are Nelson Mason and Alexander Torrell? The answer is they are right at the back of the grid. 29th and 30th, they had a coming together in qualifying this morning. The RP Motorsport and Westec teams have been flat out rebuilding the cars, getting ready for the race, but they start from the very back of the grid, although it's Nicholas Pola who runs up behind them in the Svenja Racing Lara F308, as we have the stunt plane once more completing the fly past here. So if you've never seen the European F3 Open before, to explain, there are two classes. There is the principal class, which is for the Lara F312 chassis, the Copper class, which is for the slightly older Dallara F308 chassis. They all run on a controlled slick, which is provided by Dunlop, and also a very successful bid to keep the costs manageable. The engine, gearbox, and various other components all supplied directly by the championship organisers, GT Sport. It means that this is a very affordable way to go Formula 3 racing. They are racing on 8 of the finest circuits in Europe, and as a result of that, we have a gigantic grid of cars. So the stunt plane follows them around on the formation lap. Today's race is going to be either 35 minutes or 16 laps, and it should run to the 16 laps, provided that we don't have the intervention of safety car. So there is Santiago Urrutia, winner of yesterday's race, in what turned into a rather clean sweep for the RP Motorsport team. It was Sandy Stuvik who was the runner-up, and then Alexander Torrell, who finished in 3rd. Torrell, of course, a long way back down the grid today. It's Hector Hurst, the British driver who last year competed in the FIA Formula 2 Championship, who lines up in pole position for Emilia de Villota Motorsport. But the conversation in the paddock this morning was that the other teams feel the de Villota car is better suited to a single lap pace rather than the whole race duration, and therefore Westec and RP Motorsport quietly confident that their drivers, Ed Jones, Santiago Urrutia, might be able to overhaul Hector Hurst. But Hurst, who knows all of these circuits from his campaign last year in the FIA Formula 2 Championship, could well prove to be difficult to overhaul. Formula 3 continues to be the finishing school of international motorsport. The cars proportionally have far more grip than power. They look like miniature Formula 1 cars, and what that teaches the drivers is to be smooth, be clean, be consistent, carry the momentum through the corners. It also gives us some very close, entertaining racing, although Mateo Vita in the top F3 car doesn't want to warm his tyres up too exuberantly as they head down towards the final of the 14 turns here at the Portimao circuit. You catch a glimpse of the first of the Copper class cars. Richard Gonda behind him, the Italian-American driver Luca Orlandi, who has been racing international single-seaters for many years, a little bit older than some of the other drivers in the field. Orlandi is very quick, as Emilia de Villota watches on to the monitors as the cars come to the grid then, with the black machine of Hector Hurst in pole position. The rear of the field still heading out of the final couple of turns and on towards the grid. There is then the German driver Nicholas Pola, who's had a fairly wretched weekend. He came into this weekend 3rd in the Copper class standings, was unfortunately well out of contention yesterday, was the last of the classified finishers, and starts from the very back of the grid today. Drivers just trying to get a little bit of heat into those Dunlop tyres, making sure that they can get the perfect getaway, because yesterday's race was, to all intents and purposes, decided by the time they'd made it to the first corner. Alexander Torrell didn't get such a good getaway Santiago Urrutia did from second on the grid. He took a lead, which he wouldn't relinquish. So, right, to pick out those cars for you then, as they sprint towards the first turn, well, the all-black car with the orange helmet is Hector Hurst. The blue car alongside him is Ed Jones, and then Santiago Urrutia is the silver, black and orange car. And Urrutia has got the yellow and blue helmet. His very similarly livery teammate, Alexandra Cugno, lines up just behind that blue car of Ed Jones to the left-hand side of your screen. The last couple of cars are coming into position. They're stretched almost as far as the eye can see. And we've got one or two of them at the very back of the grid. You can't see from that shot, but outside our commentary position who are just taking their time to come into position. But Nicholas Pola comes to a halt now, which means we're going to get the green flag waved from the marshal. There we go. So the red light's about to flash on. We'll be going racing for the 4th time this year in the European F3 Open, and away we go. And it's a great start from Hector Hurst. He is well away. He moves across immediately to cover the line from Ed Jones. Jones has to defend as we've got 2 cars spearing off to the side of the road, one of which has come into contact with the barrier and I suspect might not be going much further. But it is Hector Hurst who leads the way from Ed Jones. In 3rd place is Santiago Urrutia, 4th, Alexandra Cugno, although he was coming under real pressure from his teammate Sandy Stuvik, as the rest of the pack all cleanly through the opening couple of turns, which is what we wanted to see after yesterday's somewhat scrappy attempt at turn 3. 1 or 2 of them running a little bit wide out of 4, and then on to the real first big overtake opportunity at turn 5, and already Jones swarming over the tail of Hector Hurst, and with good reason, because he's got Santiago Urrutia, Sandy Stuvik and Alexandra Cugno all looming large on his tail. Richard Gonda slithers wide, rejoined, but he has got the lead for the moment over Tommaso Mancini of the copper class for the slightly older Clara 308s. There's Mancini, the first of the bright yellow cars, who's next along, but it's Hector Hurst who's got the advantage. He's got Ed Jones right in his tail, then Urrutia, and I think it's Sandy Stuvik now who has come up into 4th position, the Thai driver who has been the most consistent thus far this year. He comes into today's race as the championship leader, and already he is closing up onto the tail. Teammate Urrutia, we've also seen change with Mario Marasca, able to make his way up ahead of Alexandra Cugno in the white and orange car for 5th position. So plenty of exchanges of places in this first lap, but I think we could see a switch for the lead as they come through towards the end of the first of 16 laps here, with the leading quartet of cars running as one. This is what Formula 3 racing is all about as they plunge down the hill on towards turn 14. And Hector Hurst knows that he's got Jones on his tail. It's slipstreaming ahoy as Hurst punches the hole through the air. Jones draws alongside him in the bright blue Westec car and takes the lead of the race. So it's Ed Jones who goes through, but there's a waved yellow flag there because of that start line incident, and I just wonder whether or not that move was completed under the auspices of a waved yellow flag. Whether or not the drivers saw that is to be debated. So it's Ed Jones who's taken the lead of the race, but that may be pending further investigation as one of the Campos cars gets launched onto 2 wheels. Suspect that's possibly Denis Nagulin, the Russian driver who last year almost single-handedly kept the GT Sport spare parts truck in business, and unfortunately that looks like he's having a fairly disappointing run in today's race. Still the midfield all squabbling for positions as 2 of the Corbetta cars are in battle. It's Lorenzo Paghi who is just clear of his teammate Tommaso Mancini. As we see in the midfield, the incident, it would appear to be one of the Emilio Volta cars that went on, I think possibly Andrei Saravia, and there is Denis Nagulin launched onto 2 wheels. Suspect he may have damaged the suspension because Formula 3 cars don't like hard landings like that. Let's look at it from another angle. Very similar to the incident that took Nelson Mason out of yesterday's race. So here is one of the Emilio Volta cars in, and it is Alexei Chuklin. So I suspect it was Chuklin who came into contact with Saravia, and that's disappointing for Emilio Volta Racing. 2 of their cars being eliminated in the early stages of this race. So they sprint through on to complete the 2nd lap of the race, and it is Ed Jones who leads the way from Hector Hurst, with Santiago Urrutia in 3rd position, Sandy Stuvik in 4th, Mario Marasca in 5th, but really closing in onto his tail. Then Cugno in 6th, a challenge for 7th. Valerio Carballo trying to pick her way past Yarin Stern, but it's Stern, the Israeli driver in the black car, who keeps his nose clear of the Campos Racing car. Valerio Carballo, who launches to the inside once more into the 3rd turn, gains the place this time through. That elevates her up into 7th position. So they sprint out of fourth turn over the brow into turn 5. Ed Jones, now that he's moved into lead the race, has rather checked out here and is trying to disappear clear of Hector Hurst, who's not quite been engaged in battle yet with Santiago Urrutia. There's a little move there from Vicky Piria to the inside of Roberto La Rocca. So Piria, former GP3 racer, gains the place over Roberto La Rocca, who's arguably hoping for a little bit more from this season than has been the case thus far. One of the few drivers in the field who's remained with the same team and in the same class, coming from 2012 into 2013. So we're in lap 3 of the race. Matteo Vita in 9th position there in the black machine, in pursuit of Yarin Stern and Valeria Carballo. On his tail then is Vicky Piria. Roberto La Rocca has been passed again, and that is by Richard Gonda, who leads the Copper class. Gonda, the black car with the white nose cone. Well, he won the class yesterday in fairly dominant fashion. He looks as if he is on course to do the same again. Then we've got Artur Janos and Roberto La Rocca in battle. Janos, the white car with the yellow helmet, the Polish driver. One of 20 different nationalities on this 31-car grid as Sandy Stuvik lines up the move on Santiago Urrutia. This for third place in the race. Urrutia, though, swoops across in front of Stuvik, holds on to that podium position, but it's enabling Hector Hurst just to manage a little bit of a 3/4 of a second thereabout buffer over Urrutia, and Urrutia being slowed here by this battle with Sandy Stuvik. Stuvik clearly feels that he might be a bit quicker than the Uruguayan at this stage of the race, and therefore anxious to move clear and try and chase down Hector Hurst. And more importantly, the race leader got the incident between Alexei Chuklin and Denis Nagulin under investigation. As yet, no word on that move from Ed Jones to take the lead the race from Hector Hurst, and Hurst in second is slipping into the clutches now of the first of the RP Motorsport runners, Santiago Urrutia. He's got then Sandy Stuvik, number 1 car, on his tail, and chasing them down and showing very strongly is Mario Marasca. This is the strongest performance of the year thus far from the BVM driver Marasca, whose best result came yesterday with a 7th, but currently in 5th, and with a shot here at maybe getting himself onto the podium as they head into the penultimate turn of this 4th lap of the race. And will Urrutia be able to take advantage of the slipstream this time around on Hector Hurst? I think Hurst has maybe got just enough of an advantage, 4 or 5 car lengths, no more than that, as he sprints through up over the crest. Urrutia in hot pursuit, and then Sandy Stuvik. Stuvik not really in position to challenge Urrutia this time. The gap has gone out ever so slightly. Instead, it's maybe whether or not Urrutia is quite close enough to challenge Hector Hurst on the line. He's not. That's very tight battling going on a little bit further back, with Yarin Stern seeing off the challenger Matteo Vita. Then the last car in that train, the white and orange one, in the hands of Vicky Piria. And Piria might be able to try and squeeze the inside of Vita, who was very successful in karting before moving into the European F3 Open, competing in the Winter Series. He's going to have to defend, I think, fairly robustly here as they come over the brow into the braking zone for turn 5. Is Piria close enough to challenge? She certainly thinks she is. She dives to the inside line, gains the place, moves up into 9th position, sets her sights on chasing down Yarin Stern, then the Israeli driver, who has had an excellent start to the season with best result of 2nd in the second race at Paul Ricard. He was 5th yesterday and would appear to be well set to score another decent points, although he may have to work quite hard to see off the challenger Piria. Then we've got this battle between Roberto La Rocca and the Copper class leader Richard Gonda. Gonda in the black car trying to dive to the inside Roberto La Rocca, and through he goes. La Rocca attempts to close the door somewhat belatedly, and that will then slip La Rocca back into the clutches of Artur Janos in the Campos car. They're fighting over 11th position. It's Lorenzo Paggi and Tommaso Mencini, by the way, who complete the Copper class podium at the moment. They're in 15th and 16th, so a little bit out of contact with this battle. Plunging down the hill to complete another lap as the race leader Ed Jones is already through. And once more, Sandy Stuvik underneath the rear wing of Santiago Urrutia. But he's not quite close enough to really challenge for the move. And we saw yesterday that Stuvik, of the 3 RP Motorsport cars, arguably had the greater pace as the race wore on. But he took a long time to pick his way past his teammate Alexander Torel, and by the time he'd done that, he couldn't really get onto terms with Urrutia, who was in the lead. So I think in terms of pace here, it's probably Stuvik who is best positioned to maybe take the fight to Hector Hurst. But first of all, he needs to move clear of Santiago Urrutia. Urrutia had a wretched first weekend of the season at Paul Ricard, where he was eliminated in the start line incident in the second race. He had a quite a sizable accident on the final lap of the first, therefore scored no points, and therefore doesn't want to get himself involved in any trouble, and ideally just keep racking up those victories and podiums. Stuvik, though, following very closely in the turbulent air behind the car in front, because as in Formula One, those aerodynamic front and rear spoilers, they do kick some turbulent air behind. That means that to get right underneath that rear wing, you are asking maybe rather more of your tyres than you'd like to be doing, and so therefore you can't follow too closely behind your rival for too long before those Dunlop tyres start to go off. And that means, from Sandy Stuvik's point of view, that he would really like to challenge star of last year's Formula Bath Championship, Santiago Urrutia, sooner rather than later. So plunging down into turn 14, third place driver Santiago Urrutia, who's yet to really get himself onto terms with Hector Hurst. And if anything, Hurst has actually pulled out a little bit of an advantage on this lap over Urrutia. He has by another couple of tenths of a second, and Urrutia has got Stuvik right underneath his rear wing. Stuvik dives out, and is this going to be a lap that he goes to the move? No, not quite. And the braking zones are so short in these Formula 3 cars because of the amount of aerodynamic grip the drivers got available to them. They really are braking almost impossibly late for these corners. There's more dramas in the midfield. Being turned around, that was Yarin Stern coming in to contact then with Vicky Piria, and Stern unfortunately dropping, or plummeting rather, all the way down to 23rd position as a result of that. Frustrating for the Israeli driver. Interesting to see whether or not that incident with Vicky Piria comes under investigation, as Stuvik pushing very hard, running out a little bit wide over the AstroTurf. The drivers have all been warned about obeying the track limits, and so where possible they are doing what they can to keep themselves within at least two wheels, within the confines of the white lines on the track. Flashing through there, you caught a very brief glimpse as an instant, and flying off, that's Wan Zhu, the Chinese driver. He locks wheels with somebody coming into turn 14, and very lucky the car didn't turn over there. That is a very quick section of the circuit, and Zhu, he was in 24th position. Now will that prompt the arrival of the safety car? Let's have another look at this. And it was contact with Nelson Mason, who is having one of those weekends. The winner of the first race of the year crashed on the third corner in yesterday's race, makes contact with his Westtech teammate Wan Zhu and breaks the rear suspension of Zhu's car. Now, is that going to prompt the intervention of a safety car, I wonder? Also means that we've got a little bit of lap traffic as well that is in front of Hector Hurst. Now, is that Nelson Mason or is that Sean Walkinshaw? I think it's possibly Sean Walkinshaw in the Copper class car, the Westtech car, who now moves aside, but that has slowed Hector Hurst sufficiently to give Santiago Urrutia a good shot here at Hector Hurst as they head towards the braking zone for the hairpin at turn 5. Is Urrutia going to go for it? Well, Hurst preemptively covers the inside line. Urrutia thinks about going for the switchback. That's the wide line on the Wentz corner, then trying to get tight on the exit, and he's going to draw alongside Hector Hurst here as they sprint through turn 6 on towards 7 and 8. They're both right-handers. It's Hector Hurst who's got the inside line. Urrutia tries to dispute the matter with him around the outside, then dives to the inside. Oh, that's brilliant from Santiago Urrutia. Superb move on Hector Hurst, catching him by surprise. Lightning quick change of direction. It brings Sandy Stuvik into the battle as well through turn 9. And Stuvik trying to squeeze back through on Hurst, who in turn is once more challenging Santiago Urrutia. And Hector Hurst, I'd imagine, will be very frustrated because he was dropped back towards Urrutia by the car that they were lapping. And so the RP Motorsport man through in a flash, and now Sandy Stuvik asking all the right questions, trying to further demote the Englishman off the rostrum. And also Mario Marasca is very clearly part of this battle as well. So already Urrutia is through and gone. He's checked out. So the fight becomes one for third position. You have to say that Stuvik, if he gets a good run out of turn 14, has got a very real chance of slipstreaming his way past Hector Hurst by the time they arrive into the braking zone for the first corner here. You can barely see the car of Stuvik in the wheel tracks of Hector Hurst, but he couldn't quite draw alongside to the braking zone for turn 1. He then looks the outside line at turn 3. Again, Hector Hurst having to take the inside line. That's going to slow him down, taking the defensive racing line, and it means that to the inside, Sandy Stuvik almost launching for the move at turn 4. Very rare to see that. They'll then head over the crest to turn 5. Let's have another look at this from Santiago Urrutia. Absolutely brilliant move there. He played it perfectly, swept across the inside line, and through he went, and Hector Hurst and Stuvik are side by side coming out of turn 5, and this time though it's Stuvik who's got the inside line for turn 7, and through he goes. Doesn't quite need Urrutia's heroics, but the result is the same, and it means that Hector Hurst has been shuffled off the podium. Here we see the start of that move into the hairpin at turn 5, and now Hector Hurst under pressure from Mario Marasca as well. And Marasca into turn 10, looking to the outside of Hector Hurst, who kicks the car sideways, pushing very, very hard to the limit of adhesion here. We've also got coming into the mix and actually passing Mario Marasca, Alexandre Cougnaud, the Frenchman, another of the RP Motorsport runners. It's Hector Hurst. Every time he looks in the mirror, it's another RP Motorsport car, and it's one that would appear at this stage of the race to be going a little bit quicker than him as we have hit the halfway point. 8 laps complete, and it's still Ed Jones who leads the way. Just 7 remaining. Santiago Urrutia 2.5 seconds back, but Urrutia 4/10 second quicker last time through. And it's Sandy Stuvik in 3rd, Hector Hurst in 4th, 5th. We have got Alexandre Cougnaud. 6th place is Mario Marasca, and then 7th, Valerio Carballo from Teo Vita, Vicky Piria. Alexander Torrell, by the way, racing himself up into 10th position from the very back of the grid. He will be immensely proud of that. And then Richard Gondra in 11th, leading the copper class from Tommaso Mencini, Lorenzo Paggi and Igor Urian, but those 3 having a pretty close battle that we saw a very brief glimpse of as the precursor to the incident involving Huan Zhu. Well, Hector Hurst in 4th is not being caught particularly quickly here by Alexandre Cougnaud, but I think really the gaps to watch is the progress of Sandy Stuvik and Santiago Urrutia onto the tail of Ed Jones, because Sandy Stuvik has just done the fastest first sector of anybody in the race. Last time through, Urrutia was almost half a second quicker than Ed Jones, and they're about to complete their 10th lap of the race. There's going to be 6 to go when they come through, and it's just possible that we could see Jones being chased down by Urrutia between now and the checkered flag. Hector Hurst now slipping into the clutches of Alexandre Cougnaud and Mario Marasca. More dramas for Nelson Mason, and it is proving to be a wretched weekend. He utterly dominated the first race of the year, and at that stage we thought, well, maybe this could be Nelson Mason's season, but he then had that start line crash in round 2, or race 2 at Paul Ricard rather, with Santiago Urrutia. He rather ambitiously tried to drive from 7th to 4th, turn 3 yesterday, and ended up on 2 wheels now to the race, and today he is down in 17th, and therefore not heading for points, unlike his teammate Ed Jones, who wasn't at Paul Ricard because of conflicting commitments, but who was so dominant in the Winter Series and who many tipped to be the favourite for the title alongside Santiago Urrutia. And last time through, Urrutia was again half a second quicker than Ed Jones. It brings the gap down to just 2.1 seconds, but at that rate of closing, it's just possible that Urrutia is going to have 2 or 3 laps at the end of this race to maybe try and find his way past Ed Jones. Jones, who has got a performance really that rather belies his experience, because he only started racing a couple of years ago in the Intersteps Championship in the UK, which was the old Formula BMW cars. He then had a very busy year last year racing in Formula Renault 2 litre cars, and made the step up to Formula 3 for the final round of the European F3 Open last season, Barcelona, where he went very strongly. Carried that through in the Winter Series. Santiago Urrutia and Sandy Stuvik then running a little bit wide. Stuvik, another driver who's graduated from Formula Renault 2 litre cars, having raced to 14th in last year's Formula Renault NEC Championship. Now on this lap, again, Urrutia is comfortably quicker than Ed Jones through the middle of the lap, and it looks like Jones could be caught by the time cross the timing beam by another half a second or so. Let's see. So Jones sprints up over the crest. Urrutia in pursuit, and that gap has come down by just 0.2 of a second on this occasion. So Ed Jones setting his personal best lap of the race, Santiago Urrutia setting his personal best lap of the race. It means that this leading group of cars is just beginning to stretch itself out ever so slightly. Sandy Stuvik, after that wild ride, is some 4.5 seconds back from the lead. I don't think he's going to get himself onto terms with Santiago Urrutia, who sets the identical first sector time to Ed Jones, to the nearest 1/10 of a second. But it's through the middle sector on the lap where Urrutia would really appear to have the legs over the Team Westtech man. And if Jones were to claim victory here, this would be the 4th winner in 4 races. Although in terms of team honours, it would be 2 apiece for Westtech and RP Motorsport. There is the 3rd place driver, Sandy Stuvik, and if he stays where he is, this is going to be his 3rd podium finish in a row. Give him a fairly dominant position in terms of the title as the championship as Alexander Torrell continues his progress up through the field. That move on Matteo Vita is enough for 8th position then for Torrell. And from the very, very back of the grid, he lined up in 30th position. So he's overtaken some 22 cars, which in Formula 3 is absolutely astonishing. And again, Urrutia half a second faster than Jones through the mid-sector of the lap, as Artur Janos and Nelson Mason engage in battle. Mason still in 17th, so this is the fight for 16th position. Mason, well, the team have been saying just keep a cool head. You're not going to win this race on the first lap, and I think they'll be pleased to see Mason making it through to the checker flag, provided things stay as they are. Although Mason will be frustrated probably by the relative progress of Torrell alongside him. So amongst the leaders on that lap, it was Urrutia who was best part of 0.6 of a second quicker than Ed Jones. It brings the gap down to 1.5 seconds. We've got 3.5 laps remaining, and is Santiago Urrutia going to be able to get himself into a position to fight for the lead of the race here? Running very, very wide was Sandy Stuvik in 3rd. Hector Hurst here in 4th position. This could well be one that got away, because starting from pole, he would have felt that the podium would have been the least he was aiming for, although very much in his defence, he was managing that margin to Santiago Urrutia and Sandy Stuvik before he got caught behind the car that he was lapping. That slowed him down sufficiently to enable the RP Motorsport drivers to pounce. There you can see the gap between the leaders is really coming down. And again, through the middle sector on the lap, Urrutia a little bit quicker than Jones, but he's getting to the stage now where the laps are beginning to run away from him. He really needs to be 0.6 of a second quicker on each and every lap between now and the checker flag to be in a position to line up a shot at Jones. So Jones about to complete the 13th lap, just 3 to go. Through he comes over the line, and just 0.2 Urrutia closes up on their Jones, and the gap's still out over a second, almost 1.4 seconds in fact between the pair of them. And of course, as the old adage goes in motorsport, it's one thing to catch the car in front, it's quite another to pass them. So there you see Urrutia just under 0.2 of a second quicker. Sandy Stuvik is no particular concern to him, as Roberto La Rocca and Richard Gonda continue their fight, and Gonda remains in the lead of the Copper class, so he doesn't need to get too embroiled in a battle with Roberto La Rocca. But look at that, Gonda is being caught very quickly by Tommaso Mencini. The bright yellow car, Mencini, is 2nd in the Copper class, so we could see Richard Gonda being at risk of a late challenge for that Copper class victory as they arrive into the braking zone for turn 5. And this is always the difficulty for the quickest cars in the Copper class, is they do get caught up in the battle with some of the Glara F312s, and really Richard Gonda would quite like the buffer of Roberto La Rocca between himself and Tommaso Mencini. Instead, Roberto La Rocca now setting his sights on Matteo Vita, and Vita in turn trying to chase down the white and orange car of Vicky Piria. But it's the 2 cars at the back of this train that are the most interesting. There is Richard Gonda leading the Copper class, the black and white car. There's a big spin for Liam Venter in the Westtech car. Around he goes. is going to push Venter some way down the order. You can see that Gonda is maybe just a little bit more confident through some of these corners than Roberto La Rocca. He's got Mencini closing up on his tail. Third in the Copper class is currently Lorenzo Paggi. We are on to the penultimate lap of the race, and for the first time on that last lap, Ed Jones was substantially quicker than Santiago Urrutia. It means the gap goes back out to 1.6 seconds, and Urrutia's opportunity to maybe close in and challenge for the lead would appear to have gone. Roberto La Rocca looks to line up the move here on Matteo Vita. Vita covers the inside line, stays to the inside as they hit the braking zone for turn one. La Rocca then hoping to maybe switch back to the inside line to challenge through in towards turn three. Can't quite do it, and Richard Gonda gets pushed out, elbowed aside, trying to capitalise on the battle ahead of him. All the while, though, Tommaso Mencini is closing right up onto his tail. There is Mencini. And there is the third of the cars in the Copper class, Lorenzo Paggi, making it a pretty good day here for Corbetta Competizione, because they have got the second and third place cars. In the Copper class, it is Drivex and Richard Gonda who lead the Copper class, and it is Westtech and Ed Jones who lead the race overall, as they have done since the very start of the race. And Jones in command, as you see that last lap. He was able to pull out the best part of a quarter of a second over Santiago Urrutia, and with just one lap and one corner remaining, that should be more than enough, I think, for Ed Jones to claim his first victory of the season, the European F3 Open. He accelerates out of turn 14, pitches the car a little bit sideways, climbs up over the start and finish line, through he goes, and into the final lap of the race. Santiago Urrutia, again fractionally slower. Sandy Stuvik in third position, setting his personal best lap of the race, gives him a substantial advantage over Hector Hurst, who is still withstanding the pressure of Alexandre Cougnaud. So it would seem, despite the very best efforts of Santiago Urrutia, that it is going to be Ed Jones and Westtech who are going to score victory here in the fourth race of the season at Portimao. They've then got 3 weeks to pause, regroup and regather themselves before we reconvene at the Nürburgring the first weekend of June, and that will be followed a fortnight later by a visit to Jerez. Then we go to Silverstone in mid-July, have a summer break, then it's Spa in September, Monza October, and the season finishing in early November in Barcelona. But for now, that all feels a very long way away, because we have got Jones, Urrutia and Stuvik, the top three. They're not particularly in contact with each other, but this will be a very pleasing result for all three of them. Fred Jones really building on the pace that he showed in the Winter Series. He was fourth yesterday. He has perfectly controlled the race today. He's got just a couple of corners remaining between himself and his first win of the season. It will be the second win of the year for the Westtech team, and after the weekend that they've had with problems in testing on Friday in terms of getting the setup, damaged cars, but this makes it all worthwhile. Into the final corner then heads Ed Jones. Let's hope he just doesn't run too wide. He doesn't. Perfectly through. The checker flag is ready and waiting, and it's victory in the fourth race, the 2013 European F3 Open. Fred Jones, second place goes to Santiago Urrutia, his second podium of the weekend, and third to Sandy Stuvik, his third podium in a row. Pulsing to Hector Hurst in fourth. Alexandre Cougnaud takes fifth. Mario Marasca completing the top six, with Valerio Carballo across the line in seventh. But what about the Copper class? Because Richard Gonda was in very, very close contact with Tommaso Mencini as they come over the line, and it is Richard Gonda who does the double in the Copper class this weekend at Portimao. Tommaso Mencini in second, and Lorenzo Paggi takes third in the class for Corbetta Competizione. So smiles and handshakes abound on the Team Westtech pits. The tradition at Westtech is, if they win a race, then everybody gets a large bar of chocolate. So I suspect that one of the local supermarkets is going to be doing very good business in about an hour's time, as the race winner Ed Jones enjoys that special moment that he can savour as the marshals all come to the side of the track to applaud the drivers. As well they might. It's been an excellent weekend of racing in the European F3 Open. We've seen some very close wheel-to-wheel racing. We've also seen some really nice, precise, on-the-limit driving, the sort of performances that catch the eye of the team managers further up the motorsport ladder, and that really is what Formula 3 racing is all about. So let's have a look then at the final results. It was victory for Ed Jones by 1.3 seconds in the end from Santiago Urrutia. Sandy Stuvik claimed third, and the fastest lap from Hector Hurst in fourth, Kugno in fifth, Mario Mrasca in sixth, Valerio Carbo seventh, Alexander Toro racing up to eighth from 30th on the grid. Fantastic from him. Vicky Piria and Matteo Vies complete the top 10. Roberto La Rocca in 11th, and then Richard Gonda winning the Copper class in 12 from Tommaso Mancini and Lorenzo Paggi. Nelson Mason was able to overhaul Artur Janos. He finished in 16th from 29th on the grid. Yarin Stern after that early spin down into 20th. And Luca Orlandi, also disappointed for him to be down into 24th. We lost Andre Sararia in that start incident, and also Alexei Chuklin and Denis Nagulin having all sorts of problems. So in terms of the championship, it's Sandy Stuvik who has a fairly commanding advantage over Santiago Urrutia and Alexander Toril. So RP Motorsport looking at the top three positions from Ed Jones, who has raced himself up into fourth. Nelson Mason yet to get back on the score sheet after victory in that first race of the season, so he has got a lot of work to do. And there will be everything to race for at the Nürburgring in 3 weeks' time. And last year at the Nürburgring, of course, we saw Westtech with Sam de Jong top of the rostrum, so the Westtech team certainly know how to get their car working very well at the Nürburgring. Jones punches the air with delight. He will be very, very pleased with that performance, because it was really the perfect Formula 3 performance. He got his elbows out when he needed to at the start. He then just set consistent lap after consistent lap. Didn't get phased by the progress onto his tail of Santiago Urrutia. Urrutia and Stuvik having that super scrap with Hector Hurst until Hurst was momentarily delayed by a slower car. It gave Urrutia and Stuvik the opportunity they needed to get right onto his tail and pounce. Jones just unpicking himself from his helmet and hands device. I'm sure we'll be greeted with a very wide grin. Well, for Santiago Urrutia, it's not a victory, but it nonetheless a very impressive performance. So Jones overjoyed with that, and rightly so. Urrutia and Stuvik also can be very, very pleased. Sandy Stuvik just racking up the points and the podiums at the moment. When you get to the later stage of the season, everybody pays attention to the results in those later races, but if you are consistently getting results early in the year, it gives you that nice big points margin by the time you get to the time of the year when the championship starts to get decided. So let's take a look then at the highlights of a thrilling fourth race of the year for the European F3 Open. From the line, it was Hector Hurst who got the advantage as Alexei Chuklin and Andre Savaria tangled themselves up. It was Hurst who led into turn one, but he was rapidly demoted on the first lap or at the end of the first lap rather, by Ed Jones. Further back, Denis Nagulin running into a little bit of trouble after contact with Alexei Chuklin. Had a busy race. Some frenetic fighting going on throughout the field. Valerio Carballo and Yarin Stern having a very good scrap, which unfortunately led to Stern being spun from contention. Richard Gonda led the Copper class throughout, but had a brilliant race-long tussle with Roberto La Rocca. In La Rocca exchanging places throughout, and eventually, though, it was La Rocca who prevailed. There is the spin for Yarin Stern after the contact with Vicky Piria, and then Huan Zhu, very, very lucky to escape from a high-speed incident, the Chinese driver pirouetting out of the race. So here was the move from Santiago Urrutia. Absolutely fantastic overtaking manoeuvre on Hector Hurst to take second. And then that was followed shortly after by Sandy Stuvik squeezing through. The unsung star of the race was Alexander Toro, who gained a number of places from 30th on the grid. 22 cars he overtook altogether. The inventor had a spin in the Westtech car, but his teammate Ed Jones sailed serenely through to take the checker flag and his first victory of the season in the European F3 Open, with Santiago Urrutia in second and Sandy Stuvik in third. The drivers just toweling down behind the rostrum here at Portimao, and then very shortly they will come up onto the rostrum to celebrate. It's been a busy weekend for the European F3 Open because they have 3 test sessions on the Friday. They then have qualifying 9 o'clock both mornings, and then the 2 races. So they do have an awful lot of track time it keeps the pressure up all weekend, having to perform session after session after session, but it's all worthwhile when they congregate on the podium ready to celebrate after a really fantastic and entertaining race in the European F3 Open. Handshakes all around amongst the drivers feeling on the rostrum. So first of all, in third place, Sandy Stuvik has now been on every step of the rostrum this year, and he scores his third podium in a row. As we saw, that gives him a very, very healthy championship lead going on to the Nürburgring. In second place, Santiago Urrutia, and then our race winner, Ed Jones. Jones on to the top step of the rostrum, with Team Westtech being the winning team. National anthem then in honour of Ed Jones, as the presentation of the trophies starts with third place for Sandy Stuvik, second place for Santiago Urrutia, and then our race winner, Ed Jones, first winner of the season. Yet to have a double winner, and with 4 races in, will anybody at the Nürburgring in 3 weeks' time become the first double winner of the season? We'll certainly look forward to that. Westtech, the winning team, huge cheer from down in the pit lane. It's a very, very friendly pit lane, the European F3 Open, and the teams have a friendly, if somewhat competitive rivalry. The drivers, first of all, posing for the photographs, then they will have the champagne fight. And after the busy weekend of racing, it's the second race of the day. Who can get the cork off the bottle first? And it's Sandy Stuvik who wins it. He douses his teammate, Santiago Urrutia. Ed Jones celebrates victory, and we get to enjoy seeing just how hard in super slow motion these drivers were working out on track here in Portimao. Fantastic shot into the cockpit of Sandy Stuvik. You can see him looking so far ahead up the road, working the wheel nice and smoothly. Lots of precision. Santiago Urrutia so in second place. Some Uruguayan flags in the grandstand here at Portimao today. And then our race winner, Ed Jones. Perfect performance from Jones, exactly what he would have wanted, converting second place on the grid for race victory. Gets his championship challenge off to a flying start. In the copper class then, third place Lorenzo Paggi, second place Tommaso Mancini, and a double winner in the copper class this weekend for the DriveX team, Richard Gonda. Slovakian national anthem then in honour of Richard Gonda, the double winner of the copper class this weekend in the European F3 Open at Portimao. Presentation of the trophies on the rostrum for our copper class winners. We are next in action in 3 weeks' time at the Nürburgring, the first weekend of June, where we very, very much hope that we will have your company for 2 more thrilling races and what is shaping up to be an excellent season in the 2013 European F3 Open. As the drivers celebrate on the rostrum, it's just about enough time for myself, Ben Evans, to say thank you very much for your company this weekend. really hope that you have enjoyed the racing here at Portimao as much as I have. It has been a weekend of sunshine, thrills, spills, spectacular racing, and it gives us a very, very finely poised championship with 6 rounds to go. See you at the Nürburgring.